So we have several chapters in the new Dungeon Master's Guide that kind of cover how to learn to be a dungeon master. And that's very, very well outlined and researched. And you have like 10 years of additional...
I have DM'd once or twice.
You have have you?
Possibly a few more times than that.
Did you get new ideas on, like, talking to the audience right now, how to become a dungeon master while you were researching for the new DMG? Did new things come to light?
As I've been DMing over the past 10 years, and as I've been watching other people DM over the past 10 years, whether in person, at conventions, or online, I have been taking notes in the possible eventuality of being able to revisit the DMG and incorporate some new learnings and things like that. So yes, just like painting or writing or any other artistic enterprise, DMing is something where you're constantly learning new tricks, picking up new tips from the people that you admire or you think are doing a really good job. Not every DM is the same, nor should every DM be the same. Every DM is, in fact, unique. But there's a lot to be learned by watching people DM and by being DM'd. When I'm DM'd by somebody like Jeremy Crawford or when I watch a DM like Deborah Ann Wall, there are moments when I go, oh, that was really clever how they did that. Or, I can see the reason why they did this instead of that, given that the group that they're with or the performance they're trying to engender, that kind of thing. So for me, it was really just an opportunity to take all these notes and teachings and just codify them. Being very selective, mind you, because with a book, you've got a limited amount of space. And so knowing that what goes in the DMG should feel tried and true, I tried to cherry pick the best of what I've seen and observed and tried these past 10 years.
What do you say to people now when they want to become a dungeon master, if they reach out or you know someone who's dungeon mastering for the first time?
Yeah. The first thing I say is you're going to have a blast. It's a ton of fun. No matter how it plays out or whatever, it's going to be such an interesting and wonderful experience. Because you're going to be putting yourself in a position where you get to share a story with a group of folks and then watch it evolve in real time. And there's not many expressions out there that give you that kind of joy or experience. So that's the first thing I say. First thing I say is you're going to have a blast. It's going to be a lot of fun. And be careful, you might get addicted. And then the second thing I say is, prep as much as you want, but don't feel like you have to anticipate everything. Because part of the fun of DMing is kind of just thinking on your feet and watching things go the way they'll go.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dance.
It is, yes. And until you really kind of settle in and get to know your players' tastes, you're going to be taking just some shots in the dark. And not everything you think is going to be super cool is going to be as cool as you think. And some things you thought that you never expected to be cool are going to be even cooler than you think. I think that just preparing new DMs by saying it's going to be a fun ride, even if you're not sure where the destination is yet.
I think the most surprising thing to me, probably still to this day, is how much people glob onto NPCs I create. So I think about the story, I think about the characters they're going to interact with, but there are many characters who have persisted well beyond the plan because of the affection the players have, or the hatred of an NPC.
Another tip that I like to give new DMs is ask the players what they want. Have a conversation before you're actually planning to run the game and say, hey, I'd like to DM a game for you guys. What kind of fun are you looking for? That's not a bad way to start either.
Well, it's a great thing to provide people like a bespoke story experience instead of just shoving them into something you were thinking about.
Right, yes. And one of the things that we emphasize in the early chapters of the new Dungeon Master's Guide is that understanding your players' tastes and preferences contributes to the success of your game.
Do you still remember the first time you Dungeon Mastered?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, I still remember where I was.
Yeah, it wasn't what I'd call an ideal play experience because it was me and one player. Right. And that one player was playing all the characters in the party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's hard.
So now this was first edition.
Yeah.
So the characters were kind of like shells of characters. They didn't have much identity. There was the fighter.
Yeah.
And then there was the magic user. There was the cleric. There was the rogue. And I remember the player had a personality for the main character that he liked, and then the others were just kind of nobodies. But that was fun because neither of us really knew exactly what we were doing. I as the DM and him as the player, we were just rolling dice and having fun.
Yeah.
And only later did we realize there's a bunch of stuff we weren't doing right, at least not within the context as the rules is written.
Right.
It didn't matter.
No, it's very much a learn as you go game.
Yes, and it's technically not wrong if you're all having fun.
Yeah.
That's the wonderful thing about D&D is, yes, there are rules, and if you choose not to follow them, but you're still having fun, congratulations. You had a successful game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever got a full grasp of the rules for quite some time, just session to session, and
Yeah.
you were learning so fast. You're looking up a rule,
Yes.
you're finding the information, and then that process just kind of
Yeah.
solidifies it in your brain.
Exactly. And I remember my early DM experiences where I would pretty much just run all the monsters the same way.
Yeah.
Like, you come into the room, the monster attacks. You go into the next room, the monster attacks.
Yeah.
And it fights until it's dead. And then you go and you get your XP and you go off and keep on going.
Yeah.
And it became this sort of test of how far can you get into the dungeon before you said enough is enough. I've learned over the years to add layers of nuance and a little bit more complexity and variety.
Not really how you run things now.
No, not so much. And I'm much better at inserting things into a campaign that I know my players will be jazzed about or will terrify them. Whereas before, I was quite content just to sort of randomly throw stuff in the dungeon and just see how it plays out.
Yeah. And you've told me stories about your own campaign, and it is very clear how bespoke that everything is. Like, you have definitely made this about the players, and you delight when you're telling these stories. You added this plotline or this NPC, interacted with them in this way, and you have like a kind of a cackle in your eyes because it had such an effect on the players. And that seems to be like your main drug right now.
Sure, and I find that true of many DMs that I talk to. It's when I'm talking to them about their home play experiences, I see that gleam in their eyes when they get to the good parts.
Yeah, being able to do something that personal for someone on a weekly basis is extremely powerful.
Right. The other thing that I say is with a DM is there are different kinds of D&D experiences. There's the long-running campaign, for instance, and then there's the one-off, and both are valid. And so if you're a DM and you're not sure how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, just run a one-off.
Yeah.
And see how it goes. If the players really like it, then you can, set a follow-up adventure, and suddenly you're got the early makings of a campaign. But if you sense that it's not quite right for you, you can go back and rethink things and not feel like you're trapped in doing something over and over and over again.
Yeah, for a lot of campaigns, I don't do a ton of work until the first few sessions, and then I know what the story is going to be based off what those characters turned out to be.
Yeah. I used to be a DM who tried to plot out the entire campaign in advance.
Yeah.
And I abandoned that after it turned out more often than not to be a futile, not entirely not fun, but ultimately pointless exercise.
That's its own metagame, though, also for a Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about you doing this plot line, but you're writing a plot line on your own.
Yes.
Gives you a sense of where things may go.
Some of the stuff I've enjoyed a lot about DMing is stuff that never actually got to the table.
Yeah.
It never actually entered play or was run. Just like my mind starts racing with ideas, and that is an engaging activity for me, even if not all of them end up getting played.
That's something that probably doesn't get talked about enough about being a Dungeon Master is you are never bored. Because you can always be thinking about the campaign.
Yes.
It doesn't matter where you are.
Yes.
It's the first mobile device, your own imagination.
Oh, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, I'm always filling my head with like potential plots and things that could happen in a game if I have some downtime.
Yes, me too. And even today, after DMing for over 40 years, it's still a mental activity that I enjoy. And sometimes I'll even write out little plots of things, like I'll jot down notes of things that could happen in future adventures or later in the campaign. And there's no expectation that they will happen, but I just like dreaming of the possibilities. Something that we mentioned in the DMG 2024 is just thinking about what ifs. You know, you're trying to figure out where the campaign could go. Just start asking yourself a bunch of what if questions. What if that NPC who appeared in the third, game that you ran suddenly reappeared, months later to hound the characters? What if this villain they thought was dead wasn't in fact dead? What if something they did 2 sessions ago had an unintended consequence that they now have to deal with? I find the what if a very engaging and entertaining thought exercise.
Yeah. I took a very big plot turn because the characters they defeated the big bad, and the way the big bad got defeated was pretty brutal. And so, and this isn't how typically red caps work, but I thought, well, this person was like a demigod. What happens when a red cap comes out of the murder of a demigod? Mm-hmm. How powerful is that red cap?
Yeah.
It's just this absurdist idea, and I couldn't let go of having that. I love starting the next season of a campaign, kind of.
Yes.
With the right repercussions of winning.
Yeah.
And if that's damaging or that's a good thing, I always feel like that's a nice slow lead into the next season.
I think another great thing about a Dungeon Master's Guide, and that's certainly true of the new one, is that there is plenty of fodder there to fuel your what-if imagination.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the characters may be, halfway through the campaign and they've probably amassed a lot of treasure and things, but you might decide on a whim that one of the items they've had in their possession for a long time is a sentient item. And it hasn't manifested its sentience or displayed its sentience, but you just decide on a whim that you're going to have an item, be it a belt or a talisman or, a weapon, suddenly become a sentient item. That's sort of one of 100 things that I sort of keep on my list of things to do to my future players, is to change the truth of something to create a new situation in the campaign. And that idea might only come to me while I'm surfing through the DMG and I get to the sentient magic items section and go, oh yeah, I don't have one of these in the campaign yet. I'm going to find a home for that.
I love this Dungeon Master's Guide. It's such an easy read and such an inspiring read.
Yeah.
It does provoke you to daydream quite a bit.
Particularly in the early chapters, we wanted not only to demystify DMing and to make it as alluring a prospect as possible, but I think we wanted to just sprinkle in as many little things about DMing that a lot of experienced DMs take for granted, but is like a perk of DMing. And I'm hopeful that people will actually take the time to read those chapters, because they'll find these little bits in there that go, oh, that's something that the DM does that's actually a lot of fun. Because there is this conception, and it's not an entirely misplaced one, that DMing is work.
Yeah.
It can be.
It's fun work.
Yes. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to feel like a chore.
Yeah, definitely not a chore.
And we don't want it to. And so seeding the book with ways to make it feel less like a chore and more like a fun engagement that you long for.
I love to add certain things at the beginning I don't know if I'm ever going to use. And so sentient magical item that they don't know is sentient can make you feel brilliant. Mm-hmm. 10 sessions in, 20 sessions in. You mean we had the artifact this whole time?
Yeah.
And that I like timey-wimey stuff. I'll put mysterious cloaked figures on like a boat with them or like in close proximity and they never see who those people are. Well, if I want them to time travel back and to be those people in the cloaks.
Time travel again, Todd.
But what if the villain was on the same boat ride the whole time? Like you find out like everyone was here. They're like just
Here's a hook you can steal.
Yeah.
An item they've had in their possession is sentient. They don't know it. And it's been telepathically communicating information that is gleaned from the party to a secret enemy nearby.
That's awful.
Isn't that awful?
I guess I could imagine that as like a hyper intelligent, the One Ring that is organizing things behind everything just to get itself to either its master or whatever it wants.
Yes, exactly. I ran an adventure once where the party found a sentient ring that contained basically the spirit or a fragment of the spirit of a court jester who was murdered by an evil king. And all it basically did was maneuver the party into confronting and killing the king.
Oh, that's perfect.
As a form of vengeance, without telling them who or what it was.
I also love when villains become part of the party somehow. That always causes a weird friction, like they need to work with a villain.
Yeah.
After they've defeated the villain, and then like the next couple of, I call them episodes in my head. I can never stop because I've been live streaming so many years.
Yes. Well, a DM is like a showrunner in effect. Essentially, a campaign can be structured a lot like either an episodic or a serialized show. So episode is not we even say in the new DMG, that's a perfectly decent way to refer to a session of play or a sort of discrete length of the campaign.
Yeah, I always ask, though, like, why do you love doing this so much? I think this has ruined me as a player in some ways because I need to change characters so often because the addiction for being a dungeon master sometimes is you get to play so many characters all at once. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah. I think for me, it's the ability to wear so many hats that it never gets dull. You're never just doing one thing.
Yeah.
To your point, you're sort of any turn in which the players are not acting is your turn.
Yeah.
And you're sort of trying to keep the pace going. You're trying to keep things exciting. You're also a rules referee when necessary, if you feel comfortable enough to be that. You're also an improviser. You're trying to stay a pace or two ahead of the action to try to foresee where things are going to go. You're a content creator. You're a auteur, a director, an editor.
Yeah.
You're cutting things out of the game to keep things moving at a certain pace. You're advancing the storyline more quickly sometimes to gloss over the parts that are less interesting or less critical. The fact that you've got all of these different hats that you're wearing, I think is probably the sexiest thing about DMing to me.
I was a journalist for years. I paint, I draw, and some of the proudest moments I've ever had artistically has been being a dungeon master.
Yeah.
So many of them.
Yeah. And the other thing about dungeon mastering is everybody's got different sort of levels of strengths in all of those different things.
Yeah.
One DM might be a brilliant improviser. Another might be just be able to brilliantly embody the characters that they're bringing to life because they're such a natural actor. Other DMs are just really good with prep and keeping the game on track. Others are great with turns of phrase and describing things to make the world come alive in players' imaginations.
Yeah.
Rarely is a DM great at all of those things, and that's perfectly fine. So if you've got a shortcoming in one area, you can make up for it in another, which is great. That's a unusual situation. One of the things I like to tell new DMs, and this is codified in the 2024 DMG as well, is you don't have to be a master of the rules.
No. You can learn as you go.
You can learn as you go, and if you've got a player who's actually really good at the rules, you can lean on them. Players are participating in this enterprise and bringing the story to life as well. Often having players take on some of the DM roles is good.
It's hard to explain, but you just made me realize something very important is, when we play D&D, we tend to remember those sessions for some reason because it engages our brain and we're imagining it better than real life sometimes.
Yes.
And there's real scientific reasons for why that is happening. And when I started learning to be a dungeon master, that was the same thing. It seemed scary to me to dungeon master, but I really wanted to do it. And I learned so much faster by just doing it, not by trying to memorize all the rules in the DMG. Because while I'm in the middle of a session, I look up a rule. I have to find what is happening with this condition right now while I'm imagining it, while we're telling a story. Then you're going to remember it for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Because that is how it gets burned into your memory. So I think all of the tools are absolutely in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and this is the best one we've ever had. But if you just start being a Dungeon Master, you're going to learn very quickly.
Yes. Yes, and one of the most important sidebars in the new Dungeon Master's Guide is the sidebar that says you are going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah, I still make mistakes.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about D&D is that if you make a mistake, you can course correct. When I was working in magazines, designing and editing and art directing, an important lesson I learned is, you'll put an issue out. And you'll realize, oh, there's a gaffe or there's something bad in there. I wish I hadn't done it that way. You always have the next issue. And then the one after that. And each one will just get better because you'll get more experienced in your role. You'll start to anticipate problems before they become a thing. And it's very much the same with DMing. Every DM, even experienced ones, will go, oh, I screwed up there. I didn't run that rule properly, or I misrepresented a character. I didn't play that scene out properly. I completely missed that whole monster's ability thing that it's supposed to do, and so it was much weaker. Or I just ran an encounter that was boring.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, the next session you have a chance to sort of redo it all, or to go back and say, hey guys, I'm going to do a course correction here because this is not how this should have worked.
And that is a very also television mentality of, we have another show in 30 minutes.
Yes.
You're only good as your last show. So don't look at your mistakes as, mistakes can feel too loaded of a term.
Right.
You always have time to improve.
Yes.
You just got to keep doing it.
Right.
Thank you so much for talking about this. I always like talking to you about this stuff, and I always learn something. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, digital dragon art book, and the digital golden dragon mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.